How we doing, everyone? Welcome to Chapter 4. Apologize I'm a little late this week. Had some crazy Seton Hall stuff to take care of. And I wanted to make sure I got these videos done over the weekend, so maybe you can kill some time at work watching these at work. I am going to do my absolute best to grade the cases before the end of this week. I have a very crazy weekend next weekend, so if I don't get them done this week, they're going to drag. So I'm going to try to get the case grades back to you towards the end of this week. Okay? Some quick things about Chapter 4. Chapter 4, we are looking from a sales management's perspective. What do we do and how do we organize the sales force? Okay, so really the big deal with this is it's a line organization from VP, director, regional, and district manager. And then you eventually have the salespeople underneath that. Okay, now the sales structure, okay, we have horizontal and we have vertical. Okay, if we're horizontal, multiple people across multiple areas or divisions take care of the selling activity. If it's vertical, each specific task is assigned to a particular individual. I know it doesn't sound real helpful to do this, to explain them these ways, but there's some questions in there. Now let me get back to that. So here's some horizontal. We have internal versus external. We have the number and arrangement of our sales force. Let me hold this off until we get back to the questions there. We do have questions on outsourcing. This is a key part of the chapter. Independent versus internal. I think we're going to come back to this graph, 15. We also had some questions with regards to, is it a geographical organization? Eastern, Western. Geography helps reduce travel times. The problem is that it may not work in all scenarios, because you might need a product type organization where certain salespeople are specialists for a certain product. Maybe after they have their specialty in a particular product, they could be then sorted by geography. Okay. We're going to get to the telemarketing question because it came up within Chapter 4. And team selling, I don't think there was anything else major here in Chapter 4 that I needed to highlight. Everything else is going to come up in the questions. Let me go back to this slide because I'm going to come back to it. So let's get to those questions. This is with regards to internal versus external. Wouldn't it be more beneficial for a company to have its own sales team, one that knows their products and makes selling the product a natural process? In most cases, in the majority of cases, it is beneficial for a company to have their own sales team, to have an internal sales staff. The problem with an internal sales staff is it's very expensive. It's very expensive. And I was actually just having a call with a company I used to work with. Their sales are now in the probably not that high, $550 million a year. Most of it is domestic U.S. I'd say maybe, a tenth of it is international. They have 11 salespeople. Now, what they do have is a very large external rep force. And what happens is their product is water heaters, okay? You can only go into the wholesaler to sell the water heater so many times, because the product doesn't change all that much in a 2-3 year 4-bait, There's only so much you can do. So if you have a rep force, that this is an external sales agent, and this rep force goes into the wholesaler, and they rep a water heater company, they rep a faucet company, they rep a pipe company, they rep, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different companies, so that when they go into the wholesaler, they're not just talking about one particular product because that's the only thing that the company carries. So that's a good example for why you need an external sales force. But companies like IBM, GE, they don't use external sales forces. Xerox, the pharma. Actually, some of the pharma companies, some of the smaller biotech companies, they use external sales forces. And sometimes the smaller biotechs, they do the development, but then they cut a deal with Merck or Pfizer or J&J, and the J&J sales force actually sells the drug. Using the product method or organizing by customer type method can lead to duplication in the sales effort. How can this problem be solved? Well, it's easily solved when we're talking about existing customers. It's not easily solved when we're talking about prospecting for new customers. But either using product or either using customer, okay, you can determine within a database, and everybody has the same Salesforce interface on their phone, and you can easily look up. This is the customer, who's the DRI, the directly responsible individual. The problem when you don't have geography is when it comes to prospecting for new customers, and you don't know who is calling on someone. So what happens is you actually have to, this is customer so-and-so, they're not currently buying from us, they're located in this state and the city, I am going after them. And if that's in the database, then it basically tells other salespeople from the company, don't go after these people because I am. Here's this horizontal and vertical. Can you describe some businesses where it makes more sense to have a vertical structure and a horizontal structure? Okay, hold that thought for 1 second. So here's my thought. Horizontal is the way you currently think of what a sales force is. So if we are looking at a chart along the lines of this, okay, this is a horizontal sales organization. Your typical org chart, okay, where you have things across either by region, by division, by product, and it's horizontally organized. Think about it as all these kind of things going this way and then up and down, okay? Vertical. Think about vertical this way. Hold on. Vertical is how deep within the organization the number of salespeople you get before you go to the top. So vertical organizations tend to be very hierarchical. Okay, horizontal organizations tend to be flatter without as many of these. Now, hopefully that's a little helpful. The question asks, can you describe some businesses where it makes more sense to have a vertical and more to have a horizontal? Well, a horizontal and a flat structure is when you need to move quicker and be nimbler. And later in the chapter, there's the phrase span of control. In a horizontal structure, the salesperson and the sales manager, because it doesn't go that many levels deep into the organization, they have greater authority to make a decision or not. Vertical structures, there's very small spans of control. The salespeople probably have a very deep manual. They can't deviate from the manual. They can't do things along those lines. They have to follow the rules. Vertical, probably in regulatory type industries, such as pharmaceutical, such as healthcare, such as telecom, where there's significant government, military, like military, not Army, Navy, but like Lockheed Martin. These would have to be vertically structured, right? There has to be specific rules. Horizontal structures, we can just go out to California and see all the tech firms where there's a lot of span of control. They're very flat organizations. They probably spread out a lot longer because, there's a product or an app or a division or a blog, and they only go one or two people deep for that whole category. I hope that helps. Do you see the practice of outsourcing salespeople increasing or decreasing over the next 10 years? I don't see it changing from the last 10 years to the next 10 years. There are lots of firms that use outside sales force people. It is extremely common. This is not a new trend. We've seen it for 30 or 40 years. I don't think it's going to decrease anytime. I don't think it's going to increase anytime. Most firms do not have the revenue to have an entire internal sales force. Even companies in the 100, 110, 120, 150, $500 million range. Yes?
Need a piece of paper? Need a piece of paper.
Can you come say hello? Or are you going to not say hello?
Hello?
Dude, do you want a piece of paper or not?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Please shut my door. Alright, hold on one second. You're coming in too? Come here, dude. Say hello. Say hi.
Hello there.
Say, I'm Mini-Me.
Mini-Me.
Okay, what do you need real quick? Yeah, we can't talk about that now. Come on. Let me finish recording and then I'll talk to you about
Let's
that.
pay off the $4 from,
Okay, end scene. Let's go back to this. This outsourcing thing is not happening, not decreasing anytime soon. It really isn't. And for firms that are not the size of IBM, firms that are not the size of Apple, firms that are not the size of Xerox, almost all of them outsource salespeople in some level or some way, shape, or form. Now, all these firms that they also have internal sales forces, okay? They probably have a dozen or 2 dozen people that interact and monitor the external sales force. But this is not happening anytime soon. What functions would an inside sales force perform? You know, an inside sales force, does not mean they stay inside the corporation. Inside the sales force means they are employees of the firm. So they would do all the functions that we've talked about so far this semester. Now, sometimes we get a little confused, and I can talk about this with the telemarketing thing. There are sometimes order getter internal sales employees that these people are out in the field. They're calling on for new customers. They're trying to get new business all the time, and they do some new existing customer stuff. But then there's also a sales force that's at corporate all the time, usually telephone. Back in the day, it used to be fax orders. You would take the fax orders back in the day. Telephone or direct or inside, you know, where existing customers would place orders. Okay, these salespeople are only dealing with existing customers. They usually, it's a straight rebuy, and they just take the order, fulfill the order, and make sure more product gets shipped out. Salespeople should be equipped with an array of technologies. Does that also mean fewer salespeople are needed? Not. I don't know. I don't think so. Technologies may help you sell, but I don't think they can sell in and of themselves. Not when most B2B, the price is never exact, the price is contingent on a number of factors, and you have complex sales. You know, it really depends on how much, when, how you're going to ship, what type of, you know, we're talking about manufacturing things. You know, we're not going to use technology to sell aircraft engines. You know, it's just not going to happen. Outsourcing the sales force. I read that many companies tend to outsource functions, IT, logistics, advertising, whereas most profitable companies outsource functions that can be done more efficiently by outsourcing sales partners. Can you generalize that? No, you can't. What I can say is that the larger the firm, the higher the chance that they have a complete inside sales force. Are companies that outsource their sales force more profitable than others? No, they're not. Profitability isn't a function of just the sales force. It's a function of a lot of other numbers that are on that balance sheet, mainly their costs. And the sales force, which is part of SG&A, is probably the smaller of their costs. The cost of goods sold, especially if they're a manufacturer, are probably a higher cost item. Can you further explain the organization by customer type approach? What would be an example? So let's think hospitals and healthcare. Let's think healthcare, right? Let's think pharma. So as a pharma rep, you could go into doctor's offices. You could go into research labs. Totally different customer. You could go into hospitals. Now, hospitals tend to be the kind of thing where you go into the hospital and they have a particular condition, and every time this condition shows up, the drug has to be there all the time, and the drug has to be vetted and approved, and all the doctors use the same drug for the same scenario. So that's a totally different thing than just going into a doctor's office and sitting down with a doctor and saying, okay, these are the type of drugs that blah, 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 blah. So those are 3 different customer types. The doctor's office, a research lab, and a hospital. Okay? Telemarketing is especially effective when supported by an effective online and social media driven sales initiative. Well, this is part of this. Do you think salespeople need to fear their job will become less important in the future due to the enormous growth of technology internet? No. No, I don't. Because when we're talking about we're not talking about B2C sales. This is not Amazon. Amazon cannot sell locomotives. Amazon cannot sell the copy machine contract to Seton Hall University. Amazon cannot sell the Coca-Cola contract to Seton Hall University. It's not going to happen. Now, I left this in here, even though this wasn't a question. I forgot which group, A, B, C, or D, or E, did this. But when we talk about telemarketing in this class, we're talking about inbound telemarketing. This is when there are people to take orders on the other side of the phone. This is not outbound, the annoying stuff that bothers you during dinner. Only inbound. I'm a fan of inbound telemarketing and having an internal support staff. Some of you guys are old enough as I am, and you remember Dell back in the day. And Dell in the 90s was really, really, really amazing. Really amazing company. And all their sales were done through the phone. All their sales were done through the phone. They had an incredibly effective sales team, and it was a 1-800 number, and people would call in, they would order their computers. I'm a fan of inbound telemarketing, not outbound telemarketing. Do you think sales... Okay, I did that one already. Generally speaking, which group is harder for sales to coordinate with? Customers, other departments in their companies, or specialized sales group? Customers. It's customers. This isn't even an argument, because you need to get the time in front of the customer, and the customer's probably not going to give you the time. In your own company, no problem. Specialized sales groups, no problem. If you were to start a sales force from scratch for a small company with less than $1 million in sales, how would you personally go about determining the sales organization? Well, hopefully you can have, because if you have a small sales force, there's only $1 million in sales. You got to be careful of your costs. You won't want to be selling all around the world because you're going to lose so much in cost with regards to just travel time. Especially if it takes, a long time to get a sale. Like the one company I worked at before going to get my PhD, it was 9 months. 9 months, a minimum of 3 meetings. Well, they had more than $1 million in sales a year. They probably had, somewhere between 4 and 8 million in sales a year. Somewhere around there. And they had 6 salespeople. In team selling, usually one person has the market development fund to close the sale. It's best for sales to leave this marketing spend. In team selling, just like a baseball team, a basketball team, each person on the team has a specific role. There is probably one person who does the meeting, the greeting, the presenting, and the closing of the deal. There's probably a technical person on there, because usually this team selling happens with technical products. Either an engineer or someone who has a strong an operations person. There could be some kind of a logistics person as part of the team, because if the product, say, is needs to be manufactured halfway around the world, and it takes like 150 parts for that one product to get manufactured with, then there's usually some coordination from a logistics person or a supply chain person. In team selling, everyone has a particular role. Last set of questions for Chapter 4. Would the division and specialization of labor interfere negatively with company attempting to be market-oriented? No. I see what you're trying to ask, because every time I talk about market-oriented, I talk about breaking down silos. But you could be market-oriented as long as we have these people not stuck in a silo, and we have strong inter-firm communication between a division or specialization group. You can still be market-oriented. Question. In our company, we have many different divisions based on different product lines. That's very common. In addition, each division assigns their own sales rep to be responsible for certain customers in their territories. That's exactly the way, product A, product B, and then we have geography. However, some big box, such as Walmart, which makes you live in Bentonville, Arkansas to sell to them, Sears, Chicago, they don't have that. Home Depot, Atlanta, they do. If you want to go to Home Depot, you got to go to headquarters in Atlanta. You probably have to live there too. They also have reps to follow and keep up. It's because in some firms, if you read Procter & Gamble's annual report, there'll be a line in there that says 25% of our entire yearly revenue comes from Walmart. If you read some Home and Garden's annual report, 35% of our entire yearly revenue is from Home Depot, and 20% of it is from Lowe's. So they have a specialized rep that live in the town with headquarters, Home Depot, Atlanta, Bentonville, Arkansas. You have to do it. Of course, all dollar amount marketing purchases have been considered. So, can I say here there's a mixed organization? Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, you're in a scenario where you do have big box people and you have plenty of revenue and you can do this mixed. Mixed sales organizations are more complicated, but, how are you going to say no to these numbers? How are you going to say no to these numbers? Why are activities organized without regards to talents of certain employees? Wouldn't it be beneficial to put workers in position to utilize their talents? Well, yes. Untalented people get fired. Salespeople are on a very short leash. I mean, you might get 1 year, but you're certainly not going to get 2 years. Right? So the talented people stay no matter what. Now, perhaps their talents are for a particular product or a particular region or a particular customer. Well, then sure, they get deployed in that direction. But, if you want to follow up with me with another question here, I'm kind of not sure what you were asking explicitly. Can you give some examples of companies that do not implement specialized sales groups that function better because of it? I can't think of an example off the top of my head. It is common not to have them. Of all of them, I think geography is the most common of all. Just because travel costs and managing a sales force, it's just easier to manage a sales force by geography. When should a company begin considering changing the organizational structure? When there's a problem, or when within an org structure something is not happening to a certain way. Say operations is having a lot of problems getting information to the sales force because operations is like here and the sales force is over here in the org structure. And because they can't easily communicate because they're not on the same level in the org chart, operation takes a back seat to everyone. Yet, the salespeople have to sell what operations make. So here's it's a scenario where the org structure can influence the communication within a firm. Certain divisions have certain reputations. If everybody's not on the same equal footing, then people are going to treat you not as an equal partner. So many people dislike telemarketing. Why hasn't it become obsolete and will never become obsolete? I think I hit that one already. Do you know of any companies offhand that outsource their sales force? Are they successful? There are more companies that outsource their sales force than not, and yes, they are successful. Bradford White Water Heaters was the company that I worked for. They used to be number 4, and now they're number 2 in the United States. If the sales force is outsourced, will it sometimes come across as not being genuine? No. Because these rep firms are trained specifically. They only are allowed to carry one particular company for that product line. So if you are repping faucets and you have Delta, well then you can't have Moen. You can't have Price Pfister. You can only have Delta. So they are being genuine. And these outside sales forces, they only get paid if they sell. That's it. Do you think more companies should move towards customer-type marketing organization with regards to sales force will continue to move forward? I don't know if they should. I mean, I'm a market-oriented guy. To me, I 80-20 rule, CRM. I believe in taking care of our big customers. I like this idea up here about having the big customers and they get the most attention. But then I would still do this within geography just because it's cheaper. Very good. It's chapter 4. I'm going to end this one and give you another video so we don't have one long gigantic video. Thanks.